السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أهلا بكم في برنامج نيوكاسل مع وليد. معنا ضيف الخاص كيث باترسون من نيوكاسل. عام مضى طبعا على صفقة الاستحواذ تقريبا. اليوم عندنا ضيف مهم جدا. راح نسترجع ذكرياتنا مع بعض أيام صفقة الاستحواذ وكل الأمور اللي صارت في تلك الفترة. We'd like welcoming Sir Keith Patterson. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Well, good evening and congratulations on National Saudi Day.
طبعا thank you Mr. Keith. طبعا بشكل مبسط راح طبعا سيد كيث باترسون رجل أعمال مشجع لنادي نيوكاسل. في أيام صفقة الاستحواذ كان هناك بعض العراقيل التي وضعت من بعض مسؤولي الدوري الإنجليزي لأسباب معينة. حاولوا يعني يماطلون في الصفقة علشان الفرق الستة الكبرى. طبعا ماطل في صفقة الاستحواذ. أنا قاعد أحكي الموضوع بشكل مختصر جدا. قالوا المسؤولي الدوري الإنجليزي إنه أوكي الشروط هذه، طيب إذا ما أنتم راضيين عن هذا القرار أوكي راح نروح جهة مستقلة، جهة التحكيم في الدوري الإنجليزي اللي هي منهم ومن الدوري الإنجليزي، منهم وفيهم. لكن كانت مشكلة إنه لجنة التحكيم اللي في الدوري الإنجليزي كانت مسؤولة عن يعني شروط، وكانت تقول إنه ما في شيء يطلع، كله يكون قرارنا راح يكون سري، اجتماعاتنا سرية. هذه شروط مركز التحكيم اللي هم حاولوا يوجهون القضية لها. جاء سيد كيث باترسون جمع الأدلة التي تثبت عدم صحة المنافسة وعدالة المنافسة، وخلاها قضية رأي عام، قضية في المحكمة. فلما وصل الموضوع للمحكمة أجبروا إنه الأشياء اللي تكون سرية إنها تطلع. فوقتها الدوري الإنجليزي حس بالخطر وقرر إنه يعني يسحب أو يعني يعطي ضوء الأخضر لصفقة نيوكاسل، وحدثت الصفقة اللي هي صفقة الاستحواذ. طبعا قضية كيث باترسون تولاها مايك آشلي تلك الفترة، وأخذها يعني تبناها علشان تصعد لي يعني صارت الاستكمال القضية، وانتهى طبعا القضية زي ما قلنا بانسحاب الدوري الإنجليزي وإلغاء القضية وإتمام صفقة نيوكاسل. هذا باختصار شديد تكلمنا عنها السنوات اللي راحت. أنا حاولت ألخصها في دقيقتين. معنا اليوم السيد كيث اللي عنده أسئلة يتفضل يسألها لنا بالخاص. Mr. Keith, I would like to ask you about now it's many memories. September, it's been a year. It's emotional. يعني for me, I remember the arbitration. If you remember, it's all happened in September, and it's a coincidence that National Day it's soon. It's maybe 2 weeks only between the National Day and the takeover anniversary, 7th of October. So how you feel? How you feel when you how you feel emotionally when you remember all this?
Relieved to put that period behind me. When the takeover had been blocked from probably April 2020 through to it being passed in 7th of October 2021, there was a lot of confusion in England as to why the Premier League had blocked the PIF takeover. Newcastle fans were questioned as to how much they wanted the takeover, and had never before in certain English football history had a set of fans unanimously supported the takeover to the extent they did with the PIF takeover. It was in one questionnaire it was 93% supportive of PIF, and in another it was 97%. And those figures, Alwaleed, were far greater than any numbers that had ever supported a takeover in football history. Because you will always, for one reason or another, get people with reservations. Sometimes people don't want to be taken over by a gambling company because they are against gambling. Sometimes they don't want to be taken over by a private family because they've got dislike to that family. But to get a foreign ownership of the stature and magnitude of PIF and then get 93 to 97% of Newcastle fans say this is the one we want. Because at the time, Mike Ashley had spoken to a lot of people. There were an awful lot of people trying to buy Newcastle at the time. And there was objections to all the bids. Every bid had a level of objection. But the PIF one blew everybody's mind. It had ordinary fans like myself thinking this could be our moment. This could be. You've got to remember, Alwaleed, I don't know if you're up to date, but several years earlier, the people who bought Manchester City from the Abu Dhabi representation, they'd actually approached Newcastle first before Manchester City. So the Abu Dhabi people had held meetings with Mike Ashley's representatives to take Newcastle before Manchester City. It was seen as a better prospect, and it was seen as a more viable proposition. However, the people that Mike Ashley nominated to do that deal failed. They lost that deal with the Manchester City representatives. So when that happened, and the rest is history, Manchester City became one of the biggest forces in world football. People in Newcastle thought that's our moment gone. We've lost it. It's quite in Newcastle we use a word called uncanny. This canny means good, and uncanny means it's quite freakish and quite surreal that you could get a club of our size attracting two of the largest buyers of sport in the world. And when I sat down with the club around about the summer, about August 2020, the first question I asked is, do you know why the Premier League are blocking a Saudi takeover? And they said no. Said, we don't know. And I said to them and their legal team, until you find out why they're blocking it, you'll never be able to get it through. And so they asked me, do you know why it's being blocked? And I said, almost certainly yes. And we had documentary evidence, as where people were collectively lobbying. And in English law and in the European law, if you collectively lobby somebody within your industry, if you get together as a group and try and prevent somebody getting into a market, it's illegal. And they were collectively lobbying what was known as the Big Six in England, the Big Six clubs, to oppose the Saudi takeover. They were told in no uncertain terms, in writing, to oppose this takeover. So what we did was we furnished, and when we say that, use that word, we mean we provided these documents to the club and said, these are documents we've been given. This is what we've seen, and you need to tackle this first. And it would never ever be sorted in an arbitration, Alwaleed, because an arbitration is similar sort of dynamics to, say, an employment tribunal at work. It's very small fry. It's a smaller court. The one thing it doesn't afford you something called disclosure to learn what the other side are doing. And when that happened, and when Newcastle United struck an action against the Premier League and said, we are now going to sue you in court on anti-competition basis, that's when the takeover would never be stopped.
Keith, we get the takeover now, but the dilemma of top six still alive. Their agenda.
The Big Six is still alive, and if you remember, if you go back, forget the takeover was 7th of October 2021. If you go back, just before that actually went through, there was an organisation, or let's say a movement, called the European Super League, and it's if you go hashtag ESL, you will see that those clubs, those 6 clubs in England who are opposed to the Saudi investment, along with some large Spanish clubs, namely Real Madrid, Barcelona, some large Italian clubs like Juventus, had got together and they'd created a new playing field, whereby these big clubs, classed as the richer clubs, would create a new rule book. And it was basically a league where those teams could never get relegated. They didn't qualify for it. They just got nominated on it. Many in the UK would call that a cartel, where people are trying to create a marketplace, but not allow others to play in it, and only get people in by invite. So it's anti-competitive. And even though the takeover is now a year old, we are now bracing ourselves for the rumour that is telling us that the next thing on the agenda is ESL Mark II. So there'll be another attempt to do that. This week, there are votes we're told, are being cast by Premier League clubs to remove the domestic competitions, which are very big in England. So a lot of the smaller clubs in England, and a lot of the well-supported second division, the Championship, League One, which is our third division, League Two, which is our fourth division, they depend upon these cup competitions, and they rely upon drawing out of a hat a Liverpool or a Manchester United or a Chelsea or an Everton or an Aston Villa or a Newcastle. Because when they play those games, Alwaleed, those clubs get phenomenal gates because everyone wants to go and see the bigger teams, but they also get TV money, the kind of money that they might not see for 10 years. And so those cup competitions are critical to the grassroots and the lower leagues in England. But at the moment, there are votes taking place in England to try and remove any replays. Well, every time a lower club gets a replay, gets a draw, and they say, right, we're going to replay it next week, that is doubling the money. That's giving them money that they can't dream of. And there's moves afoot now to rule that out. And this is to allow clubs to play more European games. And so many intelligent and well-advised fans are fearful at the moment that there's going to be another launch of a Super League.
They stopped the Super League. They can't stop this one to happen. This new
the first one was squashed, and our ex-Prime Minister Boris Johnson called it a cartel. So he called it a cartel himself. He was the Prime Minister for England, and he said this is a cartel. When a cartel exists within the European Union, the law states it has to be squashed. It has to be removed. But nothing's being done on that ground. However, the penalty for these clubs in England who tried to destroy the league was they were given a fine. They were given a fine of some £3 and £4 million, which is basically petty cash. It's coffee money for these clubs. 3 or 4 million. It's absolutely barely worth putting on the accounts. And the fines were then removed. The fines were the EPL, the Premier League, let these 6 offending clubs nominate their own fines. They said, "Oh, well, we think we should be fined 3 or 4 million." Right, okay. They gave them a 3 or 4 million fine. Then they removed the fines, so they never paid any fine at all. So that's the penalty they had for nearly destroying the league. And the rumor is they'll have a second attempt, because a lot of those clubs that's in the inverted commas big 6 have got gearing and financial models that require more money. They require more TV rights, more European games, and more wealth. So in England now, it's a period of unsettlement. There's been a concerted effort to stop Newcastle United being bought by PIF. That failed. It always would fail. It was always going to be anti-competitive. It would always be illegal to stop that. And that's the threat that Newcastle ran. Newcastle did this. And that's why the deal went through. But I don't think it's gone away, Alwaleed. I don't think that that all those people have lost that greed. I think greed is inbuilt. I don't think there's people that are saying, "Oh, we're satisfied now." But the one thing they're pretty much trying to do is to stop Newcastle growing to the size it could be. So they introduced lots of restrictions on how much PIF can invest in their own company. They are trying to curtail, or withhold the size of the sponsorship. So if you look at you see the sponsorship on the shirt, if you think when Noon went on the shirt at £7 million, that's a far greater sponsorship for our club than what we've been used to. So that's a big brand for you people. Anybody in Riyadh would immediately relate to what this stands for. In Newcastle, now we support this. This is a big sponsor.
Yes, but exactly.
The shirt sponsor, this sponsor has got to go.
Yeah, that's gonna be changed very soon, inshallah.
But Newcastle are looking forward to a Saudi sponsor on the shirt.
Yes,
and the big six will be watching through closed eyes, saying, "We've got to stop the money going into Newcastle," and you can't stop it. You can't stop it. But it won't.
But we can't fight. We can't keep fighting. Of course,
you've got to fight for what's right, Alwaleed. You've got to always fight for what's right, and ultimately, the good will win, but not without a few scratches and a few scrapes.
Keith, a year passed, and after the takeover, I'm not going to ask you what is the change you see. Apparently a lot of things changed to the good way. But I want to ask what the most change got your attention in the club.
I think the whole mindset. When Newcastle fans once lived on hope. Hope was what we lived for. So when we got a cup draw at the start of the year, we hoped we would do okay. When we bought a player, we hoped he would come. When we had a good player, we hoped he wouldn't be sold to somebody else. I think now the fear element has gone from Newcastle. So Newcastle are thinking that we will win silverware soon. We don't fear. Bruno is our best player. He's got to be the best player we've got. And there was a rumor that Real Madrid were going to buy him. Once over, we'd have resigned ourselves that we're going to lose our best player. Now we look and laugh and say, why does he want to go to Real Madrid? He's at a bigger club. Newcastle are bigger than Real Madrid. And PIF don't need to sell Bruno. We need to buy more Brunos. So the biggest difference is hope, confidence, togetherness. People. There's a great rapport between Newcastle fans, Geordies, and Saudis. There's a great coming together. So when we go to the game, and Saudi people come over in national dress, people go over there to see them, to greet them, to get photographs with them, to shake their hands. To say, can I have a selfie? Can I have a photograph with you? And there's just a great rapport and there's a great love between the two nations. Between Newcastle and your people are extremely intertwined now. And we are grateful that you've invested in our club, and we don't want you ever to regret making that investment. And we don't think you could have bought a club with more potential. I mean, Newcastle has masses of potential. We haven't won a trophy for 60 years. 60 years we haven't won a trophy. Yet we still fill a stadium. We're still in the top 3 crowds in Britain, and we still hold the record. We have the record for the most fans ever to follow their team for one season, for 12 months in the lower league, in the Championship. So we've got the record of 50,000+ people have watched Newcastle in the Championship League, and that's never been beaten by Liverpool, Manchester United, Manchester City, anybody. So with your backing, with our togetherness, and with what's going on at Newcastle, we just, this is dream time. This is what you go and sit outside Santa's grotto at Christmas and pray for. This is what the kids are praying for. They might pray for a black and white shirt or a green and white shirt, but this shirt is the best-selling shirt. We love this shirt, and this is the Saudi away shirt. but it's our shirt. It's Newcastle, it's Saudi, and that aggravates people. People in England go, why are you wearing that shirt? And say, because we love it. We just love the shirt. We do. We think it's great, and people are antagonised because Geordies, Newcastle people just laugh. We just laugh. We're just on a journey, and we know it's going to a good place, and we're determined to sit on that journey from start to finish and not miss anything. You know, this is like, I've been supporting Newcastle since 1969. Okay, so I supported in 1969. That's when I first started going to a Newcastle game. I was born in 61, so I was 8 years old, and since 1969, right, they won a trophy in 1969. They've never won a trophy since, never ever. So when you think of that, I've supported my club through loyalty, but now I'm thinking, this is the club to follow. This is the place to be. We are the people to watch, and that's the biggest change, Alwaleed, that our club has got recognition, it's got credibility, and it's got the backing that we've deserved for years and years.
Celebration, Keith, of the takeover. As we see this earlier this week, Betty Greaves from Sky holding an event in Hilton, Gateshead, with Ginola and the guest speaker Amanda Stively and Merdad Gudusi. In your opinion, this is this this two parts of the question? In your opinion, this is enough for celebration, and why you think? Second part is why you think it didn't yet extend this celebration extend to Saudi Arabia, as in the past year no event happened in Saudi Arabia. Maybe the only event, if you can't call it an event, was minor event, just was by me.
I think it's twofold. I think one is, in Saudi Arabia, it's been established for years and years and years where teams like Liverpool have been the teams to follow, and people have followed Arsenal and Manchester United, you know, and they've if you like, have sown seeds in the Arabic countries, and Newcastle has been a smaller club in that sense, so it won't have the capture or rapport, or it wouldn't have the support. But now that we are the Saudi-based team, we, you know, and in England people call us the Saudis. That's our new nickname. So we get called the Saudis in England, which we like, we love, and we enjoy. And I think that then in time says, well, all the Newcastle people are right behind this. So Ginola and Amanda and Merdad will naturally have a celebration in Gateshead because they know they'll fill it. You know, they if they want 100 there or they want 1,000 there, they can get them kind of people. In Saudi, it's different because what they're trying to do now in Saudi is grow the brand. You've got to launch a brand, then grow it before you can get the numbers. And when you've done an event, Alwaleed, you have a lot of passion. You've been over to Newcastle. You know how our people work. You know how we respond to you, how much we welcome you into our fold. If you remember when the takeover went through, I met with you and other Saudi people who cooked Saudi food for us, and we wore Saudi national dress and had a celebration. But that was in Newcastle. It will take time before that kind of feeling and passion and celebration can translate over to Saudi. I mean, I would love. There's nothing I would like more than get an invite to come to Saudi Arabia and attend a function. And I know a lot of other fans that I socialise with, that I go to the game with, that do the podcast. They'd love to go too. There's nothing more they would like than an invite to Saudi Arabia to attend the function about Newcastle, because that's their life. But it will take time. And things that make it happen quicker, I believe, is things like silverware, winning a cup, you know, success. And then you'll start to see events happen over and over in Saudi Arabia.
Brilliant, Mr. Keith. What do you expect to see more yet in Newcastle and in Saudi Arabia regarding Newcastle club?
I think you'll see. I think the brand will grow, and so in Saudi, let's suppose, and now in Saudi, 5% wear Newcastle shirts and 95% wear the team's shirts. I think in the next 2 to 3 years, you'll see the 5% change to 30%. I think Newcastle will have a third of all Saudis choosing them as their team. But to do that, and for us to warrant that choice, we've got to start winning things. We've got to start winning things so the Saudi people are proud to put their colours on the back. I mean, at the minute, if they're walking around with the Manchester City top on and say, well, we're top of the league and we're in the Champions League, that's natural that some Saudi people would want to support them. But when we start doing that, they'll say, hold on, these aren't just a great team. They're the team that Saudi have invested in. And then people will switch to Newcastle. And in fairness, Alwaleed, a few short months ago, Newcastle didn't exist in Saudi Arabia, really. It was a nothing brand. And PIF have made a massively astute purchase. If you think Chelsea have just sold for 4 billion. 4 billion. Newcastle sold for 305 million. Like 1/14. So there's sort of, it's like sort of 7% to buy Newcastle of the cost of buying Chelsea. And Chelsea's, it's done. It's been grown to the size it can. Newcastle's got to grow from 305 million to 4 billion. And that'll happen in the next 2 to 3 years. That's where PIF have done. PIF will get all the promotion and all the credibility for taking a brand from there to there. So they've invested in the growth brand in British football. Clever people. Very wise.
This is a great, Mr. Keith. As I promise, it will not last more than 30 minutes, as I promise you. Last question regarding World Cup. Saudi Arabia and England will participate in World Cup. Of course, our concern with our countries, also the January window, as we spent the last few months about the summer window and the player we get. So what do you expect in January after the World Cup?
I think anybody that goes to the World Cup and does well will see an inflated price. So whoever plays well in the World Cup, Alwaleed, is then, if it's a £30 million player, he comes out the World Cup having a reasonable World Cup, and he becomes a 60, 70, 80 million pound player, and not necessarily worth that money. So first and foremost, I think you're going to see people see some very inflated prices. My knowledge and my contacts or my information, however you want to put it, I'm not bothered how people do it, is that Newcastle have already picked the people that they're looking for. So people that's connected to the club suggest that we tried to negotiate with Barcelona for a player and another possibility at Real Madrid. And those people in the last window weren't ready. They weren't ready to come. But in the next window in January, we may be ready, launched to go and take those people. We failed in terms of, it wasn't for the lack of trying, it wasn't for the lack of effort. But Newcastle failed to buy certain players. They tried to buy a right winger, and they tried to buy a defensive midfield player, and they tried to buy another forward. And it didn't happen, Alwaleed, for whatever reason. There's a phrase in England called the Newcastle tax, where any player that's coming to Newcastle, it has an added cost. So that came into play, and Newcastle did all they could do is say, right, thanks, but no thanks, it's too much. And they pushed back. It's common knowledge. They tried to buy a player from Leicester. They tried to buy a player from Leverkusen in Germany. And those players are still there. So for me, I think the likes of Pope, the goalkeeper, will play some role in England in the World Cup, the England team. I think he's a better keeper than the first choice. I think he's a much better keeper than Pickford. So I think he's got a chance of breaking through there. But he's already signed. But I also think that if the likes of Diaby, the right winger, has a great season and a great World Cup, by all accounts, he's not happy where he's at. I don't think he likes what's happening. but he's a standout target for Newcastle. So you never know. If he has a great World Cup, it could make him too expensive. It could move it beyond, you know, what they're prepared to pay. But what I expect in January, and again, some of the owners had a meeting, a discussion with a friend of mine on Saturday night after the game last week against Bournemouth, and they said we intend to bring some players in January. So I don't think they're going to pussyfoot around. I think that they've had a good first window, which kept us up, stopped us getting relegated. They've had a very good second window, which has made the squad stronger. But you've heard that Isak's just been injured in Sweden, so this will happen.
Bruno as well, as I heard, but I'm not really sure.
Bruno injured again as well. Yeah,
news, but I'm still not 100%.
And they say St. Maxim's not fully back, and Wilson's not ready. What you good remember is last year we gave the rest of the teams 14 games start. We didn't have a single win in 14 games, and we still finished nearly halfway up the table. This year we haven't given them 14 start, and we've been robbed. VAR hasn't been kind to us, but we will come good. We will come good. We will, and the owners, you know, their directive is that they are going to buy some proper players in January, and so you sort of half hope that the people that we want aren't going to excel themselves in the World Cup. However, I think it's fair to say that Newcastle already know who they're going to buy in January, and I think they'll move hell and high water to get those people. And I think we'll have a slow-ish start to the season, and I think from the World Cup onwards, January window onwards, I think we'll come like a steam train, and I do think we'll finish a lot higher than what people imagine.
Where was that taken?
Where on earth did you get that from, Alwaleed? Where did you get that from?
From my sources.
Oh, good heavens. That's great. That was taken on a private golf course in Scotland called the Renaissance, and it's they played the Scottish Open there this year, and it's a fabulous course, and I can't believe it. I was up there. I was playing with a Scotsman and an Irishman, and I used to always be renowned for wearing loud clothes on a golf course, and they said, you know, can't wait to see what Keith wears tomorrow. And so because one Scottish people wear tartan, which is the check trousers, and Irish people wear green, so I went out the next day in green and tartan trousers, and we had a little bet as to who would win the clothing award, and I won it. But I don't know how you got that. I don't know how you came across it, but it's God, the things you do.
Keith Patterson, thank you for having you tonight.
Thanks very much, and happy Saudi Day, and best wishes to everybody in the kingdom. Thank you for investing in Newcastle. I remember pleading once on Alwaleed's show never to lose faith in Newcastle, never lose faith in this project. And you people came good, and for that I'll always be eternally grateful. So have a great National Saudi Day, and thank you for believing and investing in Newcastle United.
كان معنا كيث باترسون أحد عرابي صفقة الاستحواذ لنادي نيوكاسل. ما زال لليوم بقية. شكرا لكم للمتابعة، نراكم لاحقا.